Vice President Harris has already made history many times over in her political career, but in just 30 days, she could do it again by being the first woman elected to lead the United States. Think about it. The hope for that history is palpable on Broadway. The Tony Award-winning musical Suffs exposes what women went through during the suffrage movement to gain their hard-earned right to vote. A right more than 68 million women exercised in the last presidential election. Joining us now are two stars of Suffs, award-winning Tony winner Nikki M. James, and who plays Ida B. Wells, and Anastasia McCluskey, who plays Mary Church Terrell. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for being here. I got to see Suffs about 2 weeks ago. You are both magnetic. I could not take my eyes off of either of you. Your talent, hard to describe. One of our producers had seen the show before Kamala Harris rose to the top of the ticket. And she said for her, it was very retrospective. It felt like it was actually talking about how Hillary Clinton had nearly captured the nomination and then hadn't. I, seeing it with Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, felt it was so relevant and so prospective. And I wonder, both on stage as actors inhabiting these incredible characters, but also for the audience, if there has been a shift given what you're seeing outside of the show.
Yeah. The answer to that is yes. The story I tell is it was July 21st when President Biden said he was no longer going to be running, and later, half an hour later, he endorsed Kamala, and we had a 3 p.m. matinee that day. And as the curtain rose on our dear friend and co-star Jen Colella, the audience spontaneously burst into chants of Kamala, Kamala. It was the first time we'd heard it. And it was, you could feel the energy shift. It went from a message of, our show, which is about the right to vote, is about the power of democracy, and then it feeling like really present. It's been electric.
Yeah, electrifying. I was going to say the same thing, electrifying. It was a exciting moment that day, and that day, one of our swings was on DK for Phyllis, who plays, who's Mary Church Terrell's daughter. And the three of us kind of just hugged backstage.
Oh, that's right.
It was an emotional moment as well, because the idea that a woman will be president, but also a Black and Indian woman will be president is very exciting.
Yeah.
The vice president does not talk a lot about herself, about the history that we are all witnessing. We have all witnessed being made. I mean, to be clear, it is historic that a Black woman, a woman of color, a Black woman is the major party, is the nominee for a major political party. Win or lose, she has made history yet again already. But the history and the what we might see come January 20th, if Vice President Harris is successful in her bid, is nothing, is just remarkable. And she stands on the shoulders of folks like Mary Church Terrell, of people like Ida B. Wells, folks like Fannie Lou Hamer, whose birthday is today. Can you just talk a little bit about these historical figures? Because I think people hear suffragist movement and they think, white women. Right. And it's like, I'm just saying, that's what people think.
That
and
is
it's
what
like,
they think. Yes.
Tell the people, ladies.
Well, Mary Church Terrell is someone who's not talked about enough. There's not a lot of information on the internet about her. And for me, doing character research on her, I found this amazing book called Unceasing Militant by Allison Parker. And I learned a lot about Mary, about how she was fearless, how she was a tyrant, how she was elegant, but also she didn't stand for no. She fought tirelessly for civil rights and for voting rights for women and for anti-lynching laws, close with Ida B. Wells.
That's right.
And she was very smart and strategic in how she moved. She played the game, how I would say, but she played the game to benefit Black people and women and all of humanity, in my opinion. And she's definitely become a huge hero of mine.
Yeah, and our show does not shy away from the fact that many of the women in the suffrage movement were deeply racist, and our show handles that the nuances of that conversation, but then also engages in between the Mary Church, Terrell, and Ida B. Wells had very different sort of methodologies of how they were moving through space and moving through the political climate. I will just say that just last night, Anastasia and I were on stage about to enter for a scene, and Stacey turned to me and she said, "These powerful women live inside us, and we get to share that with our audiences." And I know that all the other actors and performers on the stage feel the same. It feels very important to be telling this story about democracy and about how one person can change one person's efforts can really change the face of history, and that's what Kamala's doing. It's what so many of the women who've come before us are doing, and we're so deeply proud.
Yeah.
Many of the suffragists in the show, as well as in history, talk about and leveled up their proximity to men as their reason to be allowed to vote, which I found to be very interesting. Their connection as mothers and sisters and daughters and all of that. Do you see echoes of that in this current political environment where those lines are being drawn again, particularly given Kamala Harris's elevation in the race for the presidency? Okay,
Great. I think what happens is a lot of times what someone is saying and doing publicly is aligning with what they're doing privately. And a lot of times you are trying to build allegiances and coalitions, and you're trying to include as many people as possible to get your message as far as possible. And there are a lot of people who are making compromises and that maybe you wouldn't agree with or you disagree with. But there's a narrative. Our show is a narrative, and the political, people's political opinions are narratives too.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree exactly with what Nikki said. Yeah.
I think I'm glad. What did you? I'm glad that you teased out the fact that she sort of has these two incredible Black protagonists on stage, and they don't see eye to eye on strategy. And then the other piece that I thought was really sort of well played out is how one's age and generation comes into your perspective of what it means to be radical. That what is radical in one moment is mainstream and the next is radical in the next. And that also, to me, speaks to the moment that we find ourselves in.
Of course, each new generation that comes up thinks that they're the first people to feel the things that they're feeling. And I was guilty of that in my early 20s, and now we're working with a lot of performers who are, just starting their careers, just starting their lives. And I look back at them and I think, oh yeah, I had that fire too. And there's a way in which there's some tension between the generations in our show, and then by the end of the show, it dawns on each of the generations that these young radicals, these young upstarts are actually mirrored reflections of themselves in the past, and that we need both sides pulling. You need a person with experience saying, calm down a little bit, and you also need a young person pushing hard for change and lifting each other up. And ultimately,
I also say, not just in storytelling, but in activism work, it's spiritual work. And so the blueprint is there. Even if you don't know what that blueprint is, it's threaded through us via humanity. And I believe that firmly. So it's within you, regardless.
I want to say I sat in that theater very misty-eyed, but also I laughed so much.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's very funny. Democracy messy, also sometimes kind of funny. Nikki M. James, Anastasia McCluskey, thank you both so much for being with us. You can get tickets to see Suffs on Broadway at suffsmusical.com.